I promise you we're very well and truly married. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, and friends. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and especially to speak on women's empowerment, the law, and inclusive policy in Africa. I actually wanted to tell a personal anecdote to start off with, because, can you believe it? I'm sure you can't, but 50 years ago, I was just starting on my professional life as a lawyer. And I'd done very well in my academic stage, and so I'd come top of the bar finals. I thought the world was my oyster, particularly because in England, we'd just passed legislation outlawing discrimination. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, I found myself a first job, and at the end of that year of training, I was told, well, Cherie, there is a place available here, but there are two candidates, and one's a girl and one's a boy, so obviously we have to go for the boy. Now, this was a bit unfair because even he thought I was the better lawyer. He was, of course, quite right, and he still thinks I'm the better lawyer because it's Tony Blair. However, both of us, from that early experience, realized that things had to change. The assumption that certain jobs were only for men, the assumption that men were better at certain jobs had to change. But changing culture takes longer than just rewriting laws. It gave me two lifelong convictions. Law must be a tool for fairness, not privilege. And women's empowerment is not just a nice to have, but is essential for justice and development. We know that in this room. Africa has been central to my journey too. And today, I want to share why I believe Africa is on a hopeful path, though much remains to be done, and how women in the law and in inclusive policy can drive the continent's future. It's 14 years ago now that I founded Omnia Strategy, my law firm, with two women colleagues. We wanted to practice law differently, not just about black letter rules, but as a problem-solving discipline, what we called our Law Plus approach. And from the start, Africa was at the very heart of our work. The landscape then was very different. Many of today's milestones were still in the future. Several African countries had not yet had their first female head. The African Continental Free Trade Area did not exist. Fewer than half had women, peace and security national action plans, now in force in so many countries. Fast forward to today, Rwanda, of course, led the way as the world's first female majority parliament. Sierra Leone now mandates 30% women across public offices, and almost 30 African countries have national action plans on women, peace and security. Progress is real, though challenges remain, because at current trends across the world, the global gender pay gap will take 131 years to close. Against this backdrop, I want to say three things that tell us a great deal about where we are and where we must go. Let me talk about something where reform is still overdue, and I want to talk about international dispute resolution. I want to talk, secondly, about something where momentum is underway. That's about women in the legal profession in Africa and in the judiciary. And thirdly, a story worth celebrating, African women shaping the international arena. So let's talk a little bit about where reform is needed. Let's talk about arbitration. Do you know that recent data has shown that Africa is now the most litigated region at ICSID, which is the World Bank International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, with nearly 30% of the cases. Yet, only a tiny fraction of the arbitrators are African, and lower still are the number of women. And this imbalance is not an abstract thing. These tribunals deal with real resources. In one case, I represented one of Africa's poorest states, facing a speculative claim of hundreds of millions of dollars in relation to a failed coal-fired power station. It was speculative. The company itself had no assets at all. We were lucky. The tribunal dismissed the claim in its entirety and ordered that we receive 100% of our costs. You'd have thought we were lucky because this case was funded by investors who fund these cases. And they'd given a pledge that they would meet if they lost our costs. Let me tell you, when it came to honouring that pledge, they were not so quick to put their hands in their pockets, and we had to pursue them. Fortunately, we got our money in the end, but that was wasting again public funds, which should have gone into hospitals and schools and much needed infrastructure in one of the poorest countries in Africa. It should not be spent chasing compliance. Reform of the exit system is urgent. 4 things I'd say about reform. Firstly, we need to modernise the treaties so that they provide the right for governments to regulate for equality, for climate, for labour. Secondly, we need to build early warning and dispute prevention systems in government so we don't get to the stage where we end up in arbitration in World Bank tribunals. Thirdly, we need to ensure transparency in third-party funding so that governments who win don't then find themselves having to chase for the money that is rightly theirs. And above all, we need to bring more regional and gender inclusivity into the world of international dispute resolution, because only then will the system serve justice and not deepen imbalance. So let's talk to something about where we've seen a lot of progress: women in the law. Across Africa, still only 40% of judges at all court levels are women, and they tend to be concentrated in the lower courts. In law firms across the world, in Africa as well, women enter in strong numbers, but still taper off at partnership level. A strong pipeline, but a thin leadership. Yet momentum is undeniable. Each year, more African women are recognized as leading practitioners. Younger women are rising in the profession. And where women are visible across the judiciary, public trust grows and gender-sensitive decisions improve. But numbers alone are not enough. Capacity building is key. We need to ensure that women lawyers and judges have the tools, the training, and the networks to thrive. I have seen the impact of this firsthand. In post-conflict settings, we need to help design transitional justice programs where women, judges, and lawyers are trained alongside police and community leaders. The result is not just stronger institutions, but systems survivors could trust. And the same applies in strengthening courts, mentoring women lawyers, and embedding gender sensitivity to ensure that progress reaches the top echelons and not just at the entry level. And finally, to celebrate African women today, not only advancing nationally, but they are shaping the international order. Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala leads the World Trade Organization. Amina Mohammed, another Nigerian, serves as UN Deputy Secretary General, both amazing women I'm lucky enough to call friends. A Uganda judge, Julia Sebutindi, is currently the Vice President of the International Court of Justice, and I was privileged to appear before her just in December in the International Court of Justice climate change litigation. And for 4 years, the African Court on Human and People's Rights was led by a women president, namely Lady Justice Imani Daud Aboud from Tanzania. These are not isolated achievements. They are a pattern. African women rising to be at the heart of decisions on trade, on peace and security, on human rights, on health, on climate. Their leadership makes institutions more legitimate, more representative, and more effective. In my own work, I've seen how women's perspectives enrich even the most intractable disputes. At the ICJ, at that climate change proceedings, we argued that women bear disproportionate burdens from climate change, from displacement to food insecurity to unpaid care. And it was striking to see those arguments resonate, especially with the women judges, one of whom made that exact point in her opinion. The message is clear. When women lead, the rules of the game shift, and the outcome serves humanity. So to conclude, Africa has travelled far in a short time. Challenges remain in dispute resolution, in women's progression through the legal profession, and embedding inclusive policy. But African women are also reshaping the global agenda, proving empowerment is not abstract, it is practical, powerful, and transformative. For me, it's not just professional, but personal. From that moment in 1976, when I was told that one job would go to the man, I have known the law must do more than preserve the status quo. It must open doors. That's why gatherings like this matter, because when we commit together, governments, businesses, civil society, and women leaders, we turn the law into a drive for empowerment, opportunity, and make that dream a reality. Thank you.